Okay, so Walt, you've been trolling the anti-vax movement for some time. You really are a funny freaking dude. I gotta be honest with you. I wonder if now that the virus is somewhat stabilizing and mask mandates aren't being really enforced everywhere and that the state of emergency appears to be called off, have the anti-vaxxers moved on to another MAGA crusade?
No.
Or are they still marching around and trying to drum up support for what seems like a pretty dead cause?
That's the entire comedy, is that I started going to these anti-vax rallies. They're in New York City, and they were taking place after the mandates had been lifted. Okay. They wanted the private mandates lifted. Private mandates. Okay. They were, originally they were like, well, businesses should be able to decide, right? A private business, blah, 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 free market, right? Suddenly they're like, no, any private business doesn't get to say it. And they want, well, there's part of it has, I wouldn't say legitimacy, but they have a real gripe that is, they want the city workers or people that get their jobs back. They're like, well, the mandates are lifted. The people that didn't want to get vaccinated should all get their city jobs back, and they should be able to work in hospitals. They should be able to be around children. And then they also are big on the unmasking, unmask our children, unmask these kids, unmask. And they are so, but it is also, part of it is funny that they want these mandates lifted. The other part is, honestly, let's just be honest. It's a great way to rally people to conservative causes. I mean, it's a great way to organize. It's an effective one. I mean, look at the ways to organize for and recruit for conservatives. Trans rights.
You're not kidding. You're really
trans
not kidding.
rights, anti-vax. I mean, abortion. So like those three things are extremely effective in rallying people. Vaccines even more so, because you can rally, Black, Indigenous, people of color. You can rally people that normally wouldn't have any, common cause.
As I was preparing for this interview, because like I said, you're so fucking funny, man. Like I saw on your Twitter account or your Instagram account, it's Twitter. You posted you're walking around with a bullhorn next to some guy and you're just spewing the greatest nonsense I've ever seen. I'm opposed to, and then you start stuttering and fumbling over your words as you talk about, they're giving it out at the border. And the guy's like, what
the Doctors Without Borders. I'm like, I'm like, I'm here for Doctors Without Borders. They give these doctors borders, and they say, oh, stay within the borders. Yeah, that was one of the first ones.
I mean, the guy that you're walking next to is just completely, bewildered by your antics and so on. And honestly, he deserves it, because his antics are actually what's causing death. Yours are causing humor. It's causing laughter. His are causing death and sickness. But when I was preparing for this, I was shocked to learn that at the present moment, there are 520 vaccine-related bills introduced in state houses nationwide since January 1st of 2022. And that's according to data from the National Conference of State Legislators. And of those bills, this is another thing that startled me and actually angered me as well. 66 of those bills, of the 520, specifically relate to childhood vaccine requirements in 25 different states. I mean, don't you care about your kids? What are they trying to prove?
There we go.
Get it.
There we go.
I get it.
See, that's it.
I get it. See, well,
that's
look,
the best part. That's the part that I was going to say is they are now trying to go after all of the vaccine requirements, the other vaccine requirements. If you listen to their rhetoric, it was never just about the mRNA. The rest of it, they're going after measles, mumps, rubella,
Polio.
All that stuff. They want to go after the rest of it. Because they're like, they all claim, I swear to God, every rally they go to, we're not anti-vax, we're pro-choice, we're this. And it's like, no, you want all of the vaccines gone, all of them.
Yeah, it's not just that they want all the vaccines gone. Now, it's more. It's this whole notion that we as the GOP, we stand up for your rights to decide, right, what you put into your body. However, they appear to be quite different in their ideology when it comes to a woman's reproductive right. But I'll also tell you that as I was continuing this investigation into this anti-vax movement, the nice part is, again, according to the same organization, fewer than 10% of the bills will likely gain any traction. But then again, that's still 56 bills that are going to reduce the requirements for vaccinations. Some, 1, 2, may actually even be specific to children. I just find this to be stupid. And there's a woman by the name of Rika Lakshmanan, and she turned around and she was talking about that, and I'm going to use her quote, "Those are all chipping away at one of the end goals for anti-vaccine activists, which is completely to do away with school requirements." That's what people need to be paying very close attention to. I mean, there's a reason why you really don't see polio out there, because you are mandated, if you want to go to school, you're mandated to take the, measles, mumps, rubella, and polio vaccination.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. So they all say, well, why should I have to take the vaccine? You got vaccinated. That's fine. That's your choice. Why should I be required to take it? And one of the most basic tenets of vaccines is that how fast the disease spreads needs to correlate with how many people are vaccinated. So if it has a transmission rate of like 75%, right? That means 75% or higher need to be vaccinated of the population. The worldwide population need to be vaccinated. Otherwise, it will mutate and the vaccine will be worthless. I mean, that's how it is with COVID. If only a few people get vaccinated, the thing is going to mutate like no one's business. So, I mean, not only do people, and it's the Herculean problem, not only do people here need to be vaccinated, we need to ease restrictions so that the people in the global south and other countries can get access to the vaccine, because if they can't get access to it, it's going to mutate there. It's going to mutate wherever people are not vaccinated.
Yeah, it's true. And another thing that I find disturbing is the fact that we also have athletes, people that we all look up to, especially children. I mean, there was an article that was written, I think it was by USA Today, about 5 specific athletes who have made it their job to be very vocal about this anti-vax movement, including #1 tennis player in the world, Novak Djokovic, who, unfortunately, because I enjoy watching him play, was unable to play in a recent tournament because he was unvaccinated. And I think it was France went ahead and decided that he's not going to be able to play in the French Open. And you know what? It's not like he cares about the money. It's more about his ranking. It's more about the fact that he was supposed to be, able to make it to the finals, and he was certainly expected. But then there are others. Now, she's number 81 in the world, a young lady named Renata Vorakova, right, who I think is Czech. And she decided that she's not. Now, nobody gives a shit. She's number 81. Could you imagine? You're number 81 in women's tennis. Nobody gives a shit if you're playing or not. Most people don't even know who she is. But then we get to, again, these superstar athletes like Kyrie Irving of the Brooklyn Nets, right? I mean, come on. I walk down the street here in Manhattan, and I see these young kids all with Irving on the back of their shirts. I mean, there's somebody that they look up to, and Jonathan Isaac from, the Orlando Magic. I mean, these are real athletes that have an impact. And then there's and it's expected because he's a big Trump supporter, I believe, Bryson DeChambeau, the golfer. Right. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, He was wearing a MAGA hat in one of these, or a Trump hat or something like that. Fuck him.
It's funny that you talk about this, because I've spent so much time doing oppositional research and everything. I did last summer. I was supposed to debate Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk challenged me to a televised debate. Then he backed out because he's a coward. And so I did so much debate prep with really, with actual like virologists and epidemiologists. And I went to all of these anti-vax rallies, and I would just choose to debate people because I was like, let me lose some debates because I want to get their argument. So I know every argument that they have. I've heard every single talking point. It's all been debunked. You could debunk all of it. They all point to Robert Malone. They all he's the godfather of the mRNA. The guy has not had anything to do with the mRNA since 1989. Yes, his name is admittedly on the patent. Everything he said has been completely, thoroughly debunked, demonstrably false. And that, so to your point about the athletes, it is unfortunate because you have, there's certain police, I will speak to the white America, white anti-vaxxers. It's all right, this is ridiculous. The research is out there. It's, this is a safe vaccine. All of these talking points are complete nonsense. Black anti-vaxxers different because, it's very easy to look at the history of America and just say, I don't trust anything the government wants to give me at all. If you're a person of color, I totally get it. I know people that have been vaccinated that even had anxiety during the time because they were like, I don't know what this hospital's giving me. This could be some sterilization. And they thought, they just shrugged it off and go, all right, I'm just being paranoid. This is ridiculous. But even they admittedly said, you know what? I had this weird thought during the time of being vaccinated, just based on history. So, it's a whole thing with regards to them. But white anti-vaxxers, it's come on now,
Enough, right? Yeah, I agree with you with that. Do you have any idea if the trucker convoy that caused the gridlock at the Canadian border earlier this year had any particular impact other than, of course, the obvious, right? What the news was constantly talking about. I mean, who's behind them, if anyone? And what exactly does a good outcome look like for those people? Because I assume that they were the inspiration for the so-called People's Convoy that was going from California to D.C. I mean, is there coordination between these anti-vaxxer groups, or are they just desperate factions with similar values trying to get some media attention or a couple of more Instagram, Twitter followers?
Well, so like I said, the anti-vax movement is a great way for MAGA to recruit and organize. It's perfect. It's amazing, actually. It's very effective, and they can get people they normally wouldn't get. Right? Just like QAnon, great at getting Black, Indigenous people of color, great at recruiting them, right? So the trucker convoy, I was in Ottawa. I went to the trucker camp.
Tell me about it.
I had people that were part of the trucker convoy. They brought me into their trucks. I interviewed people. I had these long conversations. I never told them who I was. And it has nothing to do with vaccines. Nothing. It is Canadian MAGA. It is bringing MAGA fascism into Canada. All of them had the exact same talking points that I've heard in United States Trump rallies. They mirrored them. The election was stolen. Trump is the president. There's a shadowy cabal running things behind the scenes. All of the talking points were now being spit out by MAGA. Part of it was funny. I mean, I have this one interview with this Quebecois MAGA, and he's like, okay, Donald Trump is the greatest president. It's the funniest thing it's on my YouTube channel. It is the funniest thing. I couldn't even, listening to the guy talk, I couldn't even stand up straight. It was just the best. But all it is just a way to organize MAGA fascism into Canada. They all have the same talking points. It has nothing to do with the vaccine.
I think what you're referring to, by the way, when you were talking about the experimentation in the past that dealt with most specifically with black, at the time, with really only African Americans, took place somewhere,
Tuskegee.
I don't even remember. Yeah, the Tuskegee.
Well, and that's the biggest talking point they used at the anti-vax rallies. And when in reality, Tuskegee was a denial of care. The government had just come out with penicillin, and they were giving it to everyone else, all the white airmen and white soldiers that had syphilis, and saying, penicillin, boom. And they made the black people the control group. So they actually denied them proper care. Whereas this is the opposite. I mean, vaccines are...
That was the point I wanted to make, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was really, I remember, if I'm not mistaken, it had something to do with syphilis or syphilis-related complications. And yes, penicillin became we'll call it the vaccine for syphilis. It was the antidote. And for some unknown reason, they were testing other things as well without providing them information in terms of what medication that they were experimenting on. And it's disgusting, to be honest. I mean, it never should happen. It shouldn't have happened back then, and certainly not happening now. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the person who ultimately created the vaccination for COVID is a black woman.
Oh yeah, there's one of the black women, one of the doctors that had a lot to do with it.
A lot, yeah.
Was a black woman, and it was there's a lot of people whose name is on the patents that had tons of research that published. So it's like the anti-vaxxers point to Robert Malone. Robert Malone published one thing in 1989. That's it. He's not the godfather of it. Okay, the people that had serious involvement published just exponentially more research and papers on it than Malone. I mean, they out published him by just tons, and so that's the thing. And I mean, I swear to God, you go to the anti-vaxxers, they will hold up Robert Malone as if he just invented it in his lab last year, right? And they act as if he's been involved in it for decades, which he has very much not been involved in it.
And it makes absolutely no sense to me. Why are they even doing this? You have to realize that there is a significant likelihood that you're going to get really sick, end up in the hospital, and die, right? And so instead of just taking the vaccination, clearly, how many hundreds of millions of people have taken it so far? And there's always a side effect. And that's another thing that needs to be corrected on the record. There's always a side effect to a medication. I don't care if it's Advil. I don't care if it's Tylenol. I don't care if it's vitamin C or vitamin D. There is always a side effect related to something. So you can't make the 1 out of the 10 million into the denominator, right? It's still 1 out of 10 million. You can't make that person the entire set. And that's what they're doing. Well, I know a guy whose testicles, became incredibly enlarged. Someone.
Yeah, it's so funny. They all have a friend that had a thing. If you go to any rally, they'll be like, so it's like, it's like telephone talk. It's like, I know a person that died from the vaccine. I know 4 people that died. I know 5 people that died. 10 people I know have died. All my friends are dead. This happened to all my friends. And it's a lot of hearsay with regards to that. And yet if one of the people to follow is Dr. Kat, epidemiologist, huge on TikTok, Twitter, and she is an epidemiologist and she fights this disinformation. So I get a lot of my talk. Every time I hear one of these talking points, I immediately call her and I say, what's the deal with this? And so with a lot of the side effects were like myocarditis. Young males were getting myocarditis, myocarditis, low-grade myocarditis from the vaccine. And you know what else gives you myocarditis? COVID. COVID gives you very severe myocarditis. People talk about the side effects. It's like, well, this mild case of this or that. It's like, it also has a very heavy case of that side effect, COVID. So it's like these people were going to get COVID. They'd have a very severe case of X.
I mean, it's so fun. If you're watching, for example, television, some of these ads come on for various different medications. If you listen to the announcer go through, this causes, anal discharge, it causes eye bleeding, it causes, just a ton of things, cancer, lymphoma. And so why in the world would you take something, that's going to cure one problem and give you 30 others? I mean, the whole thing is crazy. But if you actually read it and you understand what it's about, they have to put it in there because the way medical malpractice is working these days, if you don't, and they somehow bring it that was the cause of it, obviously, it's without warning and so on. But by the way, the name of the doctor that I was referring to, this 34-year-old, black woman by the name of Dr. Corbett, is one I was referring to when Trump went to the National Institute of Health and met with the entire team. And then a few weeks later or so is when the vaccination, was ultimately rolled out. But Walt, let me ask you this question. As you've traveled with this MAGA circus, do you get a sense that Trump's popularity is waning any? And what do you predict will happen if Trump doesn't run in 2024? Something that I don't believe that he will. Now, you think that there's a plan B, and I'm not talking about the birth control pill, right? Maybe someone like Ron DeSantis that, this MAGA group of idiots can get behind?
I don't see the popularity as waning. I see them, picking up, and a lot of people have they get to walk around and go, see everyone, see what happened. See, we told you Biden would make a bad president. And they repeat a lot of talking points that can be very easily debunked, right? But they just keep repeating it. The Democratic Party, last time I was on your podcast, I said the people in charge of communications in the Democratic Party should all be fired. Yes. Thrown out on their ass. They're worthless. Agreed. They're worthless. Okay. So they keep repeating these talking points. The Democratic Party does not counter them whatsoever because they go, oh, that's crazy. No one's going to believe that. It's really stupid. So they talk about the Keystone Pipeline, how that's causing the gas crisis. And if Biden hadn't shut that down, they're like, the Keystone Pipeline's fine. It's you're talking about the Keystone XL pipeline. They talk about Hunter Biden's laptop. They talk about how Biden's the cause of the inflation that's happening right now. And they keep pointing to a lot of things, and there's zero pushback from the Democratic Party in terms of messaging to fight this disinformation. So then there's a lot of really stupid disinformation that gets spread that, I swear, like you go on progressive TikTok every day, someone's making a TikTok debunking this, and then the comments are just flooded with people saying the exact thing that they were already debunking. So it's just, and it becomes very heavy. It's like a lot to deal with. You're like, all right, we can just repeat this again and again. People in parts of the country are just going to eat it up. Low information voters totally just going to take it.
So it's the one thing that Trump was always good at. It was creating bumper sticker taglines that people can easily remember. It's almost like the McDonald's hamburger jingle, right? And it's said over and over and over, where virtually everybody our age remembers that jingle being played 10 million times, right? The thing with Trump with these bumper stickers, like who's going to build the wall? And then you get the audience into it, right? Mexico, who's going to pay for it? Blah, blah, blah. And one of the issues that comes up is, you're right, that Democrats do not have counterpoints. Even though it's now over a year since Trump lost the election, people are still talking as if Donald Trump built the wall and Mexico paid for it. And I understand Jamie Harrison, who's the head of the DNC, not wanting to waste time and money debunking something that is so patently stupid and so patently inaccurate that nobody can possibly believe it. But then I watch you on Twitter and you YouTube and so on, And I'm watching as you're talking to people who remained completely disillusioned as to reality.
So you don't understand the southern border. You just go to a Trump rally, just say the word, what do you think about our southern border? And they will go into hysterics. The southern border, the southern border, the southern border. It's not the border. It's this. It's the crisis at our southern border. Okay, you speak to these people, and they will tell you, "Oh my God, what's going on our southern border is crazy." To listen to them, it's
then
like
you ask them,
child trafficking and this and Biden. I was at a QAnon rally. Okay, this is the I'm really sad that I did not get this particular thing on tape. So there's a woman talking to thousands of people. That is an auditorium with thousands. It's a very large auditorium, and she is talking about how George Soros is feeding the crisis at our southern border. How is he feeding it? Well, he's leaving them cans of food. And her proof, her citation, was a singular photo with these opened cans of like beans that were like left near the border. There was just like a bunch of cans, and they were open, and they were like the food was gone. And that was proof that George Soros is fueling the crisis at our southern border. Oh my God, it was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And that's a problem. The Democratic Party will go, well, this is stupid. We don't really need to deal with this because it's dumb. Why would people believe it? And then they lose an election and they go, oh, maybe we should have adequately addressed Hillary Clinton's emails in an appropriate way and gotten in front of it and gotten ahead of it and made it our issue as much as it was their issue instead of leaving it to the rest of the public to fight about.
Yeah. Look, everybody
I will say it again, they should be fired. The people currently in charge of the Democratic Party in terms of communications should be tossed out on their ass. They're worthless.
Yeah, it's real. And when I was talking about Donald Trump and the bumper stickers and so on, I bring that up simply because as I watch your Twitter videos, and again, they make me laugh. They really should make you cry, not laugh, because these people are so ignorant to the facts and to reality. But their responses that they give to you are the bumper stickers that Donald Trump has made so popular in terms of, oh, well, they're killing our children, right? They're coming in with drugs right through the border. They're just walking right across it. And you turn around and you say, well, how do you know that? Because it's a fact. And you can't argue it's stupid. When you turn around and someone wants to tell you, well, that's a fact, and you ask them, I'm sorry, where did that fact information come from? And they tell you it's just fact. They're going off of what they hear, what friends tell them when they're sitting at the pub or at a restaurant.
It's even worse than
that.
It's even worse than that. So like all of the GQP, senators, Congress people, what they would do is they all had this photo ops where they visited the southern border, right? So all of them did that. They visited the southern border, which is more than, what our current administration has even done, fortunately to say, sad to say. And then they all came back and said that they witnessed the crisis themselves. So they all came back as if they just, were flies on the wall for the human trafficking and and the drugs and the this and the that. And the stuff that they say will tug at the heartstrings. I spoke to this one militia member at a Trump rally, and he, personally attested to having been at the southern border and saw the crisis and saw where they commit all the rapes and atrocities and hang women's panties in a tree after they rape them after they mule them, shuttle them across the border, and then they rape them and throw their panties in this one tree. And he visited that tree, and it's like, and he never witnessed anything really. He was just, at the border itself. And so, they have the power of being, these first-hand accounts, of witnesses.
Do you remember, if I'm not mistaken, there was some video of the southern border that there was a breach while they were filming, and then it ultimately came out that the people jumping over was dubbed in the back, and it wasn't even in the United States. It was a completely different wall. I have heard more people turn around and argue that we know that they're jumping over the wall. We know it. We saw it with our own eyes on a video, and that video got replayed like 1 billion times by 1 million different organizations, all of which, of course, are GOP controlled. But you're right. The messaging is so much better on the GOP side. And that's why the Democrats are falling apart right now. And that's why we're nervous about losing the midterms as well as potentially the White House in 2024.
I mean, part of my comedy videos, my earlier comedy videos, because I went to these rallies and I knew that whole border thing was nonsense. So they all say, oh, we're fine with legal immigration. And so I would always just go up to them and say, hey, we're fine with legal immigration, right? We don't mind immigration as long as it's legal, right? And they go, of course, we have no problem with legal immigration. And they actually sometimes would say very nice things, say, we were all immigrants ourselves, blah, 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 right? Then I say, hey, what do you think about Biden's plan to double the amount of visas that he's giving out? So to double the amount of legal immigration coming into our country. And just it was just the best setup to the joke, because they'd go right into it. They go, oh, that's a terrible idea. Oh my God, our country's going to go to shit. And all I've said, and so I'm like, yeah, I know for a fact you actually don't want legal immigration. You're just saying that so you don't sound completely racist. And it's this tagline that no one calls them on. It's like, you don't want legal immigration either. You don't want anyone coming in. You make it, there's an economic component to this of they're taking our jobs. They all say this because of course they're going to all become Democratic voters, when statistically that's not true at all. So that's the Democrats' plan is to have these illegal immigrants come in, get on welfare, and go and become Democratic voters. Right?
Have you also ever heard people turn around and say to you, there are these entire towns that are filled with illegal immigrants. They're all driving brand new BMWs. They're all given houses. They all have more food in their refrigerator than 4 families could eat at any given time. And I'm out there working 3 jobs in order to bring home enough money to feed my family. And that's why they, and that's why
the whole welfare queen. Yeah.
Can you tell me where that town is so I can go get a house and a brand new car too?
I swear to God, yeah, it's the whole welfare queen thing where it's like they're like, yeah, so they come in, they immediately get benefits, they get an off the books job, they get benefits, they get this, and then, as if they just come in, and as soon as they start, scamming the welfare system, then they have an anchor baby. And they, then they're scamming the welfare system, and as if they're, immediately in the 6-figure income salary, which is like total nonsense.
Yeah, and again, it goes right back to the lies and the messaging around the lies by the GOP. Now, on Twitter, you said recently that protests don't work, that we should all just stay home and vote. Can you elaborate on why you believe protests don't work, particularly totally now that women, understood. Well, that they don't work, particularly now that women and pro-choice activists will be out to, win and trying to save Roe.
Okay, yeah. So I made that in total sarcasm. That was being satirical because there's this, it's funny. Obviously conservatives are going to have a problem with progressive protests. That's fine. They can have whatever opinion they want on it. But in the last few days, when people were protesting outside of Kavanaugh's house, people that were progressive, liberals, fake liberals, fake, closet conservatives were coming out and saying, well, this just isn't the answer. We need to mobilize and vote. And it was like, no, there's, you're just, they like give you this, like, yeah, just be active one day a year, right? And I think it's like, I thought it was just so stupid. And it's funny because they're sabotaging anything. And I think that's a huge, huge problem with any progressive movement in the United States, is that it gets hamstrung by, the supposed liberals, supposed progressives putting boundaries and tone policing what is acceptable. And that's a huge problem. Most of the people that really flood my DMs and are the most vocal with me about what I'm doing are people that pretend to be progressive. On the surface, they are. On the surface, they appear to be. But I've dealt with this so much that it takes me 5 to 10 minutes to just get them to out themselves and be like, you're not progressive at all. You actually don't.
Give me an example. Give me an example. Give me one of the funnier, stupider ones.
Okay, so people come at me and they're just saying, like what you're doing is not helping the cause. What you need to be doing is this. What you need to be doing is mobilizing voters. We need to be doing this. And you should actually, respect each, and then they say things that cue me in where I go, okay. So one person got into my DMs about Kavanaugh's house being protested in front of, and I was like, okay, you know what? That's a protest. It's a legal protest. It's a protest is only as good as it's only as noble as the cause that you're fighting for, in my opinion.
Or until Trump sends Keith Schiller to go there and to get rid of him.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then it's like, then this person starts getting in on me about letting the states decide. And I'm like, oh, letting the states decide. You're not. And I was like, you're not a progressive. You're a conservative. You're just pretending to be one right now. You've said both sides. You've said states' rights. You've said this. And then the person exploded and was like, the left has gone too far. The this and that. I was like, okay, great. You've outed yourself. Thank you for that. So
what does that even mean, Walter? The left has gone too far. I hear that same tagline all the time. Yeah, the left has gone. Last night I was out with some friends of mine, and one guy is very successful, extremely, extremely bright. And that's what he said. The left is just too far. Too far of what? Too far because you don't want to impede on a woman's right to choose? Too far because who knows? I mean, it's everything. That's just the tagline that's supposed to answer any debate question that you have. The left is just too far.
Yeah, because
what about the right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that is, the left has gone too far is a nice dog whistle. And, listen, it's not that glamorous to be a conservative today in today's climate. And, depending on where you live, depending on, social circles you run in. So people sort of, cosplay as progressives. And then they say things like the left has gone too far, which is like, what, if you challenge that person and went into their ideology, they're not really that, progressive. They're just a conservative. If a conservative were to say the left has gone too far, you know what? Sure. But you have these people that they swear they're progressive. They swear that they are, for advancement of X, and when really they're not at all. And it's very, comfortable, lazy thing to say. It's the left is the left has done. What has the left done? Joe Biden is a center-right candidate. I'm not center. He's a center-right president. Okay. And he ran as a center-right candidate. It's hysterically funny. The left has gone too far. What has the left done? Do we have universal health care? Do we have universal pre-K? Do we have, free college? What do we have? I don't even think these people know what socialism is or what any of that is. It's just like these same people got yelled at about pronouns on Facebook one time, and now they're burnt about it.
Yeah, and if I hear that, this woke. Meanwhile, it's amazing because there was an article in the Morning Consult. It was a little while back. And the article was that Democrats' drive to the left threatens their grip on power. And basically what the article is talking about is how voters see both parties polarizing, but that it's only the Democrats that they increasingly say are too extreme. I have a real problem. And I was a guy who had a license to carry, a concealed license carry in the city of New York. Maybe there were 1,000 of those.
That's so hard to get, by the way.
It's basically impossible. right? But I was able to get it because of threat assessment by the FBI and so on. Anyway, make a long story short here. It makes no difference that the right wants to ban all universal background checks on firearms. Yet every single week, not all that long ago, we were seeing another shooting, another shooting, another shooting. We see all sorts of rise now in white supremacy, in these neo-Nazi fascist organizations growing. This is not a joke.
You're talking about America First? The America First Party?
Yeah, I sure am. And, this to me is extreme. We're not talking about, I understand, you're right. The Democrats want to get rid of student debt. That's pretty fucking extreme, if you ask me. I mean, why should we get rid of their debt? I paid my debt, or I'm still paying my debt every single month, and I'm not entitled. It's really amazing how the voters are only seeing the negativity on the Democratic side and not on the Republican. And once again, it goes right back to the statement that you made, and I absolutely concur with it 100%. The Democratic Party has shitty messaging.
Yeah. And it's funny what they call someone on the left. I mean, you by all accounts, I mean, you seem very open to a lot of new ideas, but I'm sure, you're not like, you probably would fall somewhere in the center or maybe center right on a lot of issues and everything like that. But you just have like sort of when I listen to your podcast, you seem to have like an openness about everything.
No, I would probably say that I'm probably center left.
Yeah, and your views are not by no means radical. But the right would categorize you as like part of the left, right? Like, I mean, if I were to compare you to, democratic socialists, authoritarian socialists, Marxists, Maoists, you would not stand, of course you'd be out of your element. However, you would just easily, in terms of their messaging, get lumped in with the big bad left, which would be like laughable. Like the way they talk about Biden as like this communist. You're like, how are you guys not even embracing his policies? Like he's more right wing than anyone. It's like, it's hysterically funny.
Look, I've always considered myself to be a fiscal conservative and a social moderate. And, at some point, if I have to drill down, do I believe that a woman should have the right to choose? Absolutely 100%. What you do with your body is your business. What I do with my body is my business. That's just the way that I see it. And we can identify 100 of these type of topics, and we'll agree on some, we won't agree on others, but I'm okay, with just allowing people to make the decision, allow the process to go forward. It's not even the problem is that there's no more process. I want to scream louder than you. I want to be more obnoxious, more of an asshole, and therefore I win, right? I win the argument. But I want to ask you this for a second. As you look at the various groups of angry Americans, I assume you make videos about all of them on the right and the left. Do you find any similarities between them other than the outrage? And do you think the pro-choice activists will have any better luck of stopping Roe from being overturned than the January 6th folks had keeping Donald Trump in office?
Oh my God.
That's a good question.
There's so funny. There's actually an amazing amount of unity on the far right and far left. They bump heads. They bump into each other a lot. Look at one of the last bills about providing, weapons and aid to Ukraine that was passed. In the House of Representatives, the 4 people that voted against it were on the extreme far right and extreme far left. It was like MTG and Cawthorn or something, or MTG and Boebert, and then it was AOC and Ilhan Omar. And these are 2 people that lock horns all the time. They're vehemently opposed to each other. And these are the only lone dissenters. And it was so weird. And so I think there's a lot of unity it's like if you want to unite, you can unite the country under the far left very easily. You talk about, income equality, going after billionaires, going after these mega corporations and reining them in. A lot of those things, they're on board with it, or repealing Citizens United. Whenever you want to, get some unity with someone on the far right, they hate the fact that, the whole Citizens United was, overturned, and that billionaires can just dump tons of money into campaigns like that. So there is like a, I wish we could actually have an honest sort of class debate on it with this. Like I wish you could run some candidate like Bernie Sanders and then run some like pro-billionaire candidate on the other side, so that like the dialogue would at least be honest and in the open, because right now it's just so muddled and weird. You know what I mean? Right now with the dialogue.
Yeah, I don't know if I even call it dialogue as much as I just call it noise and shouting. But let me ask you this then. Yeah, too much of it. As we've discussed before, you were at the January 6th insurrection, and then you later worked with the FBI to find some of the rioters. Now, here we are just a few weeks away from the televised hearings. Do you think they're going to have any impact, or have we all just grown too weary to give a shit? Also, do you think that at the end of the day, any justice will have been served?
By justice, do you mean like, the people in the Trump administration, Clarence Thomas's wife, and people like that actually aided and abetted and were actively meeting to actually, overthrow?
Yeah, I'm not referring to justice as being like guys like the Oath Keepers. Yeah, I'm not referring to justice as being like, some of these Oath Keepers or some of these, individuals that went there that are now facing 6 months, a year, etc. I'm talking about the Jeannie Thomases. I'm talking about the Laura and Eric Trumps. I'm talking about, Donald Trump, Don Jr., Rudy Kaludi. I'm talking about all of these folks that people cared about, that people know, not the idiot that went and followed and joined a protest because he was high as a fucking kite. I'm talking about the people that created this insurrection, that allowed it to happen. The same people that sat upstairs in the White House watching it on television, refusing to turn around to call for assistance in order to save the police officers and others. That's the people I'm talking about.
I'm not optimistic about that. And I feel like people put out a lot of information about it and thinking that this is going to turn the tide somehow. And people don't understand that, what's feeding the right algorithmically and in media is that it was Antifa agitators, and they've allowed the messaging to be such that it's like to downplay everything that happened that day, right? Because I've gotten accused. I was at January 6th. I was at Capitol Hill. I saw a great deal of what happened. And I'm accused of being an agitator. I was behind it, right? Like it's so ridiculous to me that is even a story. I've had people in the street yell at me and say, you were the guy behind January 6th. You were one of the people. And I look at them incredulously, like, how dumb are you? Probably very. And it's amazing that messaging has been able to be repeated on and on, that it was a small amount of people, as if it was just a few MAGAs. It's like, no, I was there. It was Walter, thousands of people surrounded every single entrance window, ripped off every door, every artery into Capitol Hill was penetrated by thousands upon thousands of people. Everyone on the outside knew exactly what was happening on the inside. These people that claim like, oh, we didn't know what was happening inside. Yes, you did. These people came back outside and told you what was happening, and you cheered, and I watched you cheer. So the messaging from it has been ridiculous. It's actually kind of disgraceful that they, it goes on and on from like, what about the rioting? What about Antifa riots? What about? Well,
that's what I was going to say to you. According to Donald Trump, it wasn't MAGA. Quite frankly, I believe it was Antifa. Right. And this is the problem. That one statement by him, I have heard it by thousands of people like you on my Twitter account. I get bombarded. Bullshit. Wasn't MAGA. Had nothing to do with Donald. It's all Antifa, right? It's all George Soros. Now, let me ask you this then. Do you think that any of these pro-MAGA groups have any special plans to deflect from the January 6th hearings?
They've already been deflecting. They're always going to, because when you listen to them talk about it, they're like, well, they wouldn't allow Jim Jordan on the committee. They would, basically they wouldn't allow the people that were literally
no, Walter, that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking if you think any of these pro-MAGA groups have any special plans. I'm talking about creating disturbances elsewhere in the United States or even in Washington to disrupt the hearings.
I don't even think they need to, because no one's, their own base isn't going to believe what's happening. You could have someone at the hearing literally say, someone could get up in front of the hearing and just say, I colluded with Donald Trump. I met with him. I did this and that. And they'll figure out some way to just move the goalpost as to how suddenly that person is being paid off by Soros. No matter who it is. Unless you'd have to have Trump himself get in front of the hearing and say, I did it. I knew it. I was trying to overturn the election. I tried to do this and that. And there's just so many cases where it's like egregious, where they were literally trying to overturn the election on that day and this and that. And it's like, it's beyond fact. It's factual that they, what they were trying to do.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Nobody on the left is going to disagree with the findings on the hearings, so long, of course, the hearings show that Donald Trump and his cohorts were responsible, and no one on the right are going to believe that Donald Trump had anything to do with it. So do I think the hearing is it necessary for history? Sure. Is it a waste of time? Probably, yeah. But I want to ask you this on a personal note. Does all of the interaction with these crazy people ever get you to personally or on a soul level? Does any of it ever really just sort of get to you? Because you deal with such intense levels of hate and hostility when you're creating your work. You ever take a break and just look at the landscape from afar and wonder, what the fuck is next?
Yeah, last year, I took a 3-month break, and it was very necessary. I was just at my wit's end. I was literally about to have a breakdown because I was around their energy for so long, and it gets to you. And my father's a psychotherapist. I send him videos, and he looks at them and he finds them destabilizing. He says, watching these videos from this level of unreality, it's similar to when I'm treating someone with schizophrenia. It feels very destabilizing. He's mental health wise, he doesn't find them fun to watch. And so I've come up with some sort of regiment after I go to these events where I have to give myself 3 days afterwards to sort of decompress, because it's like stepping into an alternate universe. COVID never happened. The election never happened. This never happened. Those people from COVID aren't really dead, but I didn't say they didn't die, but they did die, but they didn't die, but they also died from obesity. Then, January 6th was just all Antifa. Abortion, the pro-choice people just want to eat babies and murder babies, and babies are being ripped out of the womb, and the doctors are, forcing abortions on young women. They're just ripping them out. And the border crisis, there's millions pouring in each day. Stuff that's demonstrably false, completely untrue, is being agreed upon in this large group setting by, thousands of people in a group. And it's a lot. You're like, this is.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine the anxiety's got to be overwhelming. Also, having to be around them, saying, "Oh my God, is someone going to hit me with a baseball bat or behave the way that they did on January 6th?" Got to constantly look. When I walk the streets, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder all the time. But I can imagine you're putting yourself right into the dead center of MAGA territory. But I wanted to then ask you this, because you have a huge presence on Twitter. How do you feel about Elon Musk and his struggle to take over Twitter? Do you think it'll be good or bad for the platform and, in essence, really for the world? Or is it just more of the same? Nothing's going to happen. It'll be exactly the same thing. Do you think that if he does take it over, that he'll even let Trump back on?
I hope to God he does not let Trump back on. But here's the problem with the whole Elon Twitter thing. I think it's a farce. They talk about how there's no free speech on Twitter and there's no free. Last summer, I was telling all of my TikTok creator friends, I said, hey, everyone, bring your content over to Twitter. It's so much better here. Your videos don't get taken down. It's so much harder to get banned, shadow banned, post banned, all of that. You can do so much. There's literal porn on Twitter right now. Like there's literal porn then, like not just like suggestive. I'm talking about like full on penetrative porn on Twitter. Okay. There's a lot that you can do. Sometimes their algorithm will, suspend people's accounts unnecessarily. It does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, but there's so much you can do. And so from last summer, I started being more active on Twitter than I was on TikTok. And I have a huge following on TikTok. And I was telling people, come over to Twitter. It's great over here. And so then when Elon is saying, oh, there's no free speech on this platform, my first thought was, are you kidding me? We have been able to get away with saying so much. You can't threaten trans people that work in the White House, and you can't, spread complete disinformation about ivermectin and HCQ. The rest is fair game. You can threaten trans people that don't work in the White House. That happens all the time on Twitter. You just can't do it if they work in the White House.
I'm just wondering what your father has to say about you watching porn on Twitter. I mean, I think that's probably the single most important question that I can possibly ask you. But, Walter, as we're winding down the hour, and as I say on all these shows, the hour really goes by quick. I have one last question for you. Just about 6 months from now, there's an election. Do you have any sense of who might win, considering the ever-changing landscape of the American public and now the current state of our government?
It actually scares me because my vision is that you'll have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Cawthorn, and Boebert. They won't be outliers anymore. You'll have people that come into Congress, that are pro-America first, that are really awful, that they make the old Trump camp look mild by comparison. They make the Tea Party look mild by comparison. And that totally worries me. And I'm glad that you have progressives finally waking up to this fact. Some of them, because they don't see the information that I see. There's a bubble. Everyone's in their sort of bubble where it's very echo chambery with people on every side of the spectrum. So they're not seeing the rhetoric that's being passed around. So then of course, when something bad happens in the media, they go, oh, this is going to be the nail in Trump's coffin. No, it's not. So a progressive that's in their bubble would mistakenly think that. They'd mistakenly think that because of this issue right now, we're just an ace to win in the midterms. No, we're not. There's a lot of districts that are really up for grabs, especially, so I'm not optimistic. I'd love to be wrong about what's going to happen, especially if people are going to, criticize us protesting in front of Kavanaugh's house. We're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, but you make a great point here. Every single day, you're going to find one of these moderators, right? And as Sean Hannity says, he's not a journalist. He's a talk show host. So you get one of these talk show hosts talking
the only time I've agreed with Sean Hannity is that he's not a journalist.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, he says it. He's always said that he's not a journalist. He's a talk show host. But at the end of the day, every single day, you hear somebody talking about how this is now the nail in Trump's coffin. And yet, nobody has been able to put the nail in. And just when you think that the nail is ready to be put in, you get somebody like Alvin Bragg walks away. You get another case like the PIC case, the Presidential Inaugural Committee, something where Stephanie Winston Wolkoff had provided tons of documentation, right? What did they do? They settled it for $750,000. Are you fucking kidding me? right? There's like $100 million or whatever it is that's missing. There's all this abuse of power, including taking advantage of the hotel with foreign, dignitaries staying there and so on. And now all of a sudden, it's $750,000. That's going to make everything fine. What kind of stupidity is this? And then again, I didn't hear a single Democrat come out and say, whoa, slow the fuck down there, buddy. Right? We're not worried about $750,000. Oh, great. Donald, maybe he should write a check to Ukraine for weapons. That's not going to do shit. It doesn't move the needle in this country anywhere. What we need is we need people to be held accountable so that we could finally have some peace of mind that our Justice Department is not corrupt, that our politicians aren't corrupt, that the whole fucking system isn't corrupt. This is the problem. And again, as Democrats, we have no message. We have nobody out there in front like Donald is doing, leading the charge.
Yeah, it's sort of like a mishmash of and I think because of Trumpism and the whole pro-choice debate, you have a lot of very corporate Democrats, and you give them basically cover. They could just be totally corporate backed. They don't care about any real reform, substantive reform. Yet all they have to do is say that they're against Trump and that they're pro-choice. And suddenly everyone looks the other way about every other policy they have, where you're like this, and it gives them such great cover. And that's what annoys me, is that being, pro Black Lives Matter, just being for the concept of Black Lives Mattering, being for a woman's right to choose. These aren't crazy issues. These are just should be in a normal society, a normal issue. Yet, they become this big liberal lefty thing because of the opposition, and it gives a lot of really shitty people cover to just say this, and everyone just sort of goes, oh, okay, they're on our side. Meanwhile, they're very much not for anything substantive whatsoever.
Yeah, just for themselves, money and power, and their continued need for attention. But Walter, let me thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. I'm always happy to be on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I will have you back
Michael.
For sure. But please stay safe, especially upstairs in your head, right? But keep making those videos. I do truly enjoy watching them, and I certainly recommend everybody to, follow you on Twitter, because those videos are fantastic.
And follow my YouTube, longer form content. YouTube, Walt Masterson. Yeah, it's my channel. That's where I have all right.
I'll follow you content. If you follow me back. How's that?
Yeah.
All
Thanks,
righty.
Michael.
Walter, be good, my friend. Stay safe.